A lot of different stories. I mean, sometimes you have a fire that starts out really small. We jumped a fire in 1988, actually right just a drainage away from South Canyon where the firefighters were killed, outside of Glenwood Springs, just above the town of Glenwood Springs. And I remember it was right on top of a ridge and very, very steep, extremely steep country, and then a big drainage with a lot of big high brush. But it was just piddling around. It was early in the morning, just piddling around. And one of the guys on the aircraft said, "Well, we'll be out of here by by the end of the day, And we jumped the fire, and the sun came up, and the heat came on it, and it was so steep, the stuff kept rolling down, and we were on that for several days. Ended up calling in more crews, and it just went really kind of crazy. Fortunately, we were able to contain it after several days, but it took numerous aircraft and several hotshot crews that came in. It didn't turn out the way we thought it would. I mean, it looked really, really easy, but it just took off on us. And then a fire in Oregon once, 85, 84, somewhere around there, I'm not sure the year, but we flew all night from here, and we didn't have a lot of sleep, and so we hit it right early in the morning. It was a very dry year, the wind came up, and it was that sort of open, a lot of sagebrush country, rolling hills, and some timber. And it just took off. You could watch it just sort of roll over the hills. We just chased that thing for a couple of nights, just trying to keep some kind of line along it. But basically, it was just really following it. It just blew up. Yeah, there's just a bunch of different ones. Those are just some of them that had little things with them. But there's a lot of, I mean, particularly with jumping, there's a lot of stories. It might be a really difficult spot to get into, or everyone's hung up in trees, or the cargo's hung up. Well, one time we jumped a fire. Actually, Andy and I jumped, and a guy named Kev Hodgen jumped the fire by Belden. Really nothing but timber, huge timber. That was our spot. It was just smaller trees, essentially. And so we all landed in the trees, and we got out of the trees, but they dropped the cargo, all landed in trees. And Kev, we had these new radios. I don't think he paid attention to the radio in the radio class, but he let the jump ship leave before we could find our cargo. So we had to actually go down to the fire, and we used our hard hats and rocks to try to scratch this line on this steep little section of. Fortunately, the fire wasn't very big. It had hit a big old dead tree, and it had come down and started a fire, but it wasn't taking off. The timber was pretty thick, so the sun wasn't really getting down on it. And we were able to actually sort of line this thing crudely with rocks and sharp rocks and our hard hats. And then what they ended up doing was jumping the rest of that load on our gear, essentially. And then they brought this gear down to us. But what was funny was after we got off the fire, the dispatchers from that forest sent a box back to us here, and they had like a stick with a rock tied to a stick, and they had these primitive, almost Cro-Magnon looking tools, with like they had been partly burned, and they had a note saying your jumpers left these tools on the fire because they'd heard about the experience. There's things like that were pretty funny, yeah. And the fire itself wasn't any big deal. Really, it was a bear came in and scared somebody, and it was little things like that happened on the fire that really are almost incidental to the actual fire itself. So sometimes the fire are just gigantic, and you're just so busy trying to get some kind of handle on it. And other times you have a little fire, there's all kinds of other little things are happening that make it really memorable too.